This week on the 77% Street Debate.
Adama Barrow is not using all means possible. He's using democratic means to ensure that, he's sustained in power.
He realized the good life that comes with being a president. Let's be honest. You went from broke, from rag to riches instantly.
Whoever emerges as the winner of the election is the will of the Gambian people.
The 77% is in the capital of the Gambia, Banjul. And actually, behind me is a monument, Arch 22, that was erected to commemorate the successful coup of 1994. I should also mention that it was bloodless. And that brings us to where we are today. Is it possible for African governments to have peaceful transitions of power? And if not, how come? Well, I have a very esteemed group behind me. They all happen to be men. I promise you this was not by design. But never mind, the show must go on. We'll begin with Said here, who is a political scientist. And I just want you to give us an overview of the Gambia's political history in case people watching don't understand.
Gambia has been having electoral democracy for over 70 years now. And since our colonial time, we continue to vote every year. So one thing that Gambians are aware and understand properly is the act of voting.
All right. You say that, and yet it's ironic because I just mentioned that Arch 22 is designed to commemorate something that might be defined as a monument for tyranny. What would you say about that?
Well, to use tyranny might be too much.
Or treason.
Yes, but it was designed basically to to show a new vision for the Gambia. At least at that time, that was the discussion. But of course, it has come to be characterized with the regime that over the period has brutalized Gambians, and of course they did some sort of a economic transformation. But today they are remembered for most of the brutalities, and this thing still stands here, but still it reminds people of the bad days.
Okay, but fast forward, now we're in what I guess most Gambians might say are the good days. I don't know if the people in the panel agree. Are these the good days, better days for Gambia? No? Okay. Let's go to Yankuba. He says no. Yankuba is part of a movement here called 3 Years Jotna. Yeah. It was specifically created to ask President Barrow, who was recently elected, to step down after 3 years, a promise which he had made before coming into power. Tell me a little bit about the movement and why you think the Gambia is still not seeing better days.
So basically, that is one of the reasons why we do not have better days. If President Barrow had adhered to his own promise and pledge that he made in the 2016 elections.
All right, tell me some of these promises that were made, please.
So the promise he made is that he was going to step down. He was going to lead a transitional government for 3 years, at the end of which he will not participate in the election and will ensure that we have a level playing field. He reneged on all of that promises. For us, it's not the number game. It's not only 3 years, 5 years. The most important part of it is the promise that he was going to step down. For the first time, we were going to have a president who gracefully stepped down from power. Remember, the first president had to be kicked out. The second one, the sub-region had to come and help us to remove him. God knows what will happen with him now, with the way he's trying to entrench himself to power. He's doing everything to entrench himself in power, and we might end up needing the United Nations to get rid of him.
Well, you say that, but Lamin on this side, let me speak to Lamin here for a second, because you are of this party, right? You support Adama Barrow's party, and obviously you want to see him continue, not just until the conclusion of this term after 5 years, but even after that. What are your feelings and sentiments that he is trying to consolidate power in the way that Jammeh did?
Well, far from that, Adama Barrow is not using all means possible. He's using democratic means to ensure that, he's sustained in power for a particular period of time. He ruled this country with an open mind in a democratic manner. He ensures that the democratic institutions are functional. The democratic institutions dispense their mandate without fear or favor.
Okay,
so there's no indication of such.
We'll come to the constitutional mandate, but what do you respond? Because Yankuba has said he made a promise. He did make a promise. Whether or not that was legal or whether it was bound by law is another question. But morally, did he have an obligation to keep that promise?
Well, that's subjective here. it's subjective, and I mean, people do not agree. Even I mean, those who really come together at that time to design those to formulate that policy or that guideline as to 3 years or 5 years. So there was nothing wrong in any ways, and I disagree with him entirely.
I want to come to Sana here because he's really shouting from the other side. Now, Sana is actually a journalist who went into exile for a while, and then he came, you joined Barrow's party, and then you decided that that's not working for you.
I came into Gambia as an independent journalist. I work on my own as an independent for over 1 year. I went into the government because I believed that this government had an opportunity to fix issues that made people cry for the 22 years. But then along the way, somewhere after a year or so, it was written all over the world. Everybody could see it. There was already talks between the APRC and the president.
How long did you serve in that government?
2 years, 4 months.
2 years, 4 months. That's nearly the first 3 years of Barrow.
Actually, I came after the first year, so I didn't start with Barrow.
So surely, if you weren't able to do what you needed to do in the first 2.5 years, how can you blame Barrow for saying, I need extra time to continue the work that I started?
Excellent. That's a good question, because Barrow actually was not supposed to ask for extra time. Barrow told us in the beginning, I was on the social media campaign committee of the coalition. I was not on the ground, but we were campaigning online for Barrow to come into office. We propagated his campaign manifesto to the whole world. So we contributed to bringing Barrow into office. But the promise was he was supposed to serve 3 years. I was thinking that when I come in 2018, by 2019, after the 3 years, he was going to say, okay, I'm going to lead the country to elections and step down peacefully.
All right, let's hear from Killer. Let's hear from Killer. You were in exile, particularly because of this same issue, political interference, if we may say so. How do you feel about the state of the country right now?
I personally do feel disappointed when it comes to promises made. I feel that Yankuba failed to highlight key promises apart from the term limit, which was part of it. Term limit was part of the promises made, in the manifesto of the coalition, so that's one promise that has been undermined. We had a commission for the Constitution to draft a new Constitution, and the incumbency themselves undermined that process, and the 2 terms scrapped out until only God knows when. When it comes to the nation moving forward overall, I think we're going backwards because, one, as a society, we have the same people who were actually, turning against the Jammeh system, fighting against the Jammeh system, now clapping for a new government that's doing the same thing and applying the same system that Jammeh was using. So there's double standards within us, which leads to these leaders feeling like they are gods, because if they see us divided as a people who are twisted and don't even know the realities and don't know what we're fighting for, they will always have the edge over us, and that's the situation that we have now.
Okay, Ibrahima, I don't know if you heard what Killer A said there, but he said the country is moving backwards. You actually come from an organization called 5 Years for Gambia, advocating Gambia for 5 years, advocating for Barrow to stay in power at least until the end of this year. Now, when we look at the video of Yahya Jammeh coming into power in 1994, it struck me that he said, we don't plan to be here long. We want to set up institutions and then we'll be on our way. Doesn't that sound very familiar to what Adama Barrow is saying? Give me more time, I'm not done with what I've done.
Well, actually, Adama Barrow is not the only one to blame. You are talking about a seven party member coalition. After close to the end of the 3 years, there was a split in the coalition. You had a lot of inconsistency in the coalition.
Ibrahima,
they went to Barrow. No, I'm coming. Why he had to continue? That's the $1 million question. Why he had to continue?
Had to, not wanted to. Had to.
Of course, you said why did he continue? Why did he not honor his 3-year agreement? The agreement was reneged upon by the coalition members, the majority of the 7 coalition parties.
So it wasn't his fault?
It wasn't his.
Okay.
They went to Barrow and said, we want you to continue for a period of 5 years in order to continue the reforms, the developments here and there. And then
let me give you my follow-up question. Do you then see how that can create mistrust? The question then becomes, if he wasn't able to keep his promise then, what makes us think he's going to keep other promises in the future?
That is not realistic. I can't measure that by that, because actually what I saw him do after the 5 years, now that the 5 years is coming to an end, there has been problems, and I think 3 years just now made it extremely difficult. They almost made this country ungovernable. They made sure that this country was almost ungovernable for over a year or two. So having to come out of that, Barrow has no choice but to seek for another term,
All right.
as he rightly said.
But I mean, I want to.
No, in fact, he wants to seek for a term.
Please,
no,
please.
no, he is the president.
Lamin, I want to stick with you because there are utterances your president made, which I think anybody in Africa would be shocked if they heard, that he would rather die than face the shame of losing an election.
You see, that's a statement that is
Oh,
very.
come on.
Listen, wait. Let me come on. You see, this is a familiar statement in our local setting.
Explain it to me, please.
The understanding is not that, for example, I rather die, which means probably I will bring down the sky to become the president. Like in our local dialect, we believe that nobody wants to be associated with shame. Those who are criticizing the president for that statement, they understood from where he is speaking from.
Yeah,
but they were just using it as a political point to misinform the public as usual. But he doesn't mean it in any. Illegitimate context. It was in a context.
Killa has something to say regarding that. Killa, I want to hear your feedback on this.
I'm just saying, these people, right, like, they beating around the bush when it comes to the real issues of what's happening here in the Gambia. Like, key promises that were made, been rejected. There's no reform. There's no security sector reform. There's no constitutional reform. So all of these things that we need as a backbone, as a nation to move forward, we lack it. Today, like, amongst the promises made by the president, whilst these guys were clapping for him, was that the youth would, see a viable environment. People are still dying in the sea by larger numbers than before, record numbers.
True.
Facts is out there. That gives the incumbent power, and we need young people who has up to his capacity. He's a very brilliant person, but I expect him to be the type of people that can bring change by at least speaking the truth when it's necessary.
You see, in this country, there are a lot of truths. Each party, each group, they have their own truths. And we have not been able to sit together and then discuss and put those truths together. But at some point, I have to step back and see, Barrow came in as an independent candidate. He built on his movement, and then that's why he came up and have his NPP, because he wanted to engage also in politics. I'm not justifying why he did that, but of course the context is important, that we need to understand that.
Absolutely. Yankuba, let's hear from you, and then we'll get to Killer Ace, and finally I'll get some solutions.
Yeah, so firstly, let me respond to the point you raised, which is very important. And that is this statement or the threat by Barrow that he would rather die than to be insane or be shamed by his electoral defeat. What he failed to understand, whoever emerges as the winner of the election is the will of the Gambian people. We held a successful demonstration here on the 16th of December. The whole world was a witness to it. It was the most peaceful, grand demonstration Gambia has ever held in the history of this country. One thing we are really proud of is that President Barrow will never sit in history to say that I stayed because it is the will of the Gambian people or the Gambian people wanted that. That's what the excuse Yahya Jammeh had used all along, that we went beyond the 2 years transition because the people demanded it.
All right, let me hear from Killer Ace. No, let me hear from Killer Ace, please.
I don't even know what to say.
Oh,
when they're, back and forth, you know what I'm saying? My point is, as a neutral somebody, like I said, youngsters part of the people that played a part in making sure that Barrow is what he is today. When they had their part and their share in the administration, people like us were going into the streets and they were praying for us to get messed up. So to me, they don't sound valid. None of them don't sound credible when it comes to the interests of the country. And this is one of our main problems and why these people are always in power, because we put our selfish interests ahead of national interests. I remember years ago, as soon as we came back to Gambia from exile, we continued the mission. We saw things that were unjust that were still happening, from corruption to police brutality, human rights violation, and the whole nine. And then we came out to protest and do what we had to do. And it was these same people, most of these people that are here, including these 3 years judging the people, that were in support of Barrow and calling us names today. You feel what I'm saying? So we need to stop the hypocrisy as Gambians. This is the main reason why we're here today. No. Let me talk. Y'all had your political debate for an hour. Let me just
give him some time.
Let me just do my thing. You feel what I'm saying? That's when it started. You had people who came and blatantly accepted the fact that they brutalized and tortured and harmed Gambians on national television. And those same people are still the heads of police departments. They're still the heads or still in position. So these are all things that were all signs to show that this was inevitable, because the problem of Africans when it comes to power, the first 3 years, like, he realized the good life that comes with being a president. Let's be honest. You went from broke, from rag to riches instantly. And things like that all equates to the reason why we have this problem today, where we have two people who used to be in the same bed arguing over an issue that's only relevant to them and not us, the people and the young people who are going through the struggle.
Speaking of young people, I want to come to Mustafa because you are actually part of the National Youth League. You're the one who's supposed to be upholding the interests of young people like Killer Ace there, but you're being accused of getting lost in the politics of it all. True or false?
That is absolutely false. Young people of this country, especially those at National Youth Council, are not actually lost in anything when it comes to this politics. I just want to state it categorically clear that the people at National Youth Council are not actually neophyte or are not actually supporting a political party. When Jammeh refused to step down, we issued a press release condemning his act and that he should respect the will of the Gambian people. We are not advising the president. That is not our mandate. Our mandate is to advise the minister, who in turn advise the president on youth and youth-related matters.
So what's your take on what Killer Ace has said, that this government, you know, in Kiswahili we have an expression, mvinyo umebadilishwa lakini chupa ni ile ile. The bottle has been changed, but the liquor inside is the same. So is this the same case?
I will not like to put it with the bottle and the liquor here, but I just want to put this in perspective right now as we speak, because I don't just want to actually be labeled with one or two things. Now, when you check right now, the two people that are actually debating, the two people that wanted to bring the sky down, these people were actually in the same political party. And this is what the National Youth Council understood, and we might not want to come in the middle to be caught up with crossfire. This is why our advice to the youth is to make sure that they scrutinize this politician, to make sure that they vote for the best interests of the country.
Now, I would like to see by show of hands, how many of you think that there will be a smooth transition either to continue Barrow's presidency or to another president? How many of you believe it's going to be free, fair and smooth? So the majority, you don't believe it's going to be free, fair nor smooth? It will be free. You don't think fair nor smooth? All right, let's hear from you, Mustafa.
I'm just speaking on the perspective of the National Youth Council based on our observations. Right now, what we see in social media, what we see in our villages and in town, tells you that the election might not be very smooth as we speak. Right now, everything is tense. The political party, there is a lot of crisscrossing between this major political party. And then for one to say that this election is going to be very smooth, it is something else. And then this is why, for us, we are going out to speak to the youth, to make sure that we have a peaceful election.
Lamin, I want to come to you because you've said something that the Gambia is not decided or is not reflected on Facebook.
I mean, when we came here in the morning, this afternoon, nobody would have thought that me and Yankuba and some of these people would have shared pleasantries. You know, I mean, let's do it peacefully. And people have seen our president in political platforms making those announcements that, you know what, even if your opponents come violent, just maintain calm. After all, it's an election. We can go through peaceful election, and then the transition can happen smoothly, and then we move into another issue.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to hear from Sana. What do you think we can do as Africa's youth to ensure that we don't get into situations like what we saw in Guinea?
I think we should just reject anything that brings along division within this society. Okay. Of course, when you talk about the youth, we know that sometimes the problem starts with the youth themselves. But I have seen that, and I have a very strong belief in the Gambian youth, in our ability to preserve our peace and our ability to promote peace in all what we are doing. We need to stick to our guts and know that Gambia first.
Okay, fantastic. Killer Ace, I want to hear some solutions. How do we ensure that we do not find ourselves in another 1994 situation in the Gambia?
Yeah, we just have an unhypocritical population of people who definitely come together as a people to fight for what's right.
So Gambia first, as Sana has
Absolutely, you know, and put our, personal interests out of there. And two, it starts with these politicians, because the thing is, what they portray and how they live behind the scenes is hypocritical to me. That goes back to my youth. Don't be used by these politicians. Don't be used. They only here for their interest. It's been proven they're going to use you as a cheerleader, and then when they're done, they're going to dump you, abuse you, and then you're going to go back to the same situation that we're in right now.
Okay, Yankuba, let's hear from you.
Yeah. So the solution is down to the leadership. Adama Barrow is a man whose presidency came at the back of the hard work of everybody in this country. So it's a big betrayal that he's not even able, even at present, when there is so much polarization in society, he's not able to call all the political party leaders and said, look, we are all one. I have seen when you all were sweating and doing so much for me to become a president. I don't want this country to be disintegrated because of me. But this polarization is not helping. but it has to come from the leadership.
All right, it needs to come from the top.
The leadership has to do it.
Okay,
And it is a failure
Ibrahima.
of leadership if it's not happening.
Ibrahima, Lamin, you've already had your piece. Ibrahima, I'd like to hear from you, please. You want President Barrow to continue for another 5 years, maybe even 10. How do you ensure that even if that happens, or if that happens, that it's peaceful, that everybody is behind the country?
Well, I said, having come from a peace organization, a peace building organization, sat there and saw the risks. The risk that this country was heading to. I and President Barrow one-to-one, I would tell him the truth, that this country is more important than you.
Yeah.
This is the country, it is the Gambia that we have. He is my childhood friend. We know each other. We met at the age of 10. I am among those who would sit and tell him, Mr. President, this is wrong. When the Minister of Interior sat at the Birkama rally and said, talked about pouring hot water on protesters, I mobilized my people. I went to his office and told him that is a no-go area. You shouldn't say that. You need to apologize. The Gambian people are more important. You have no right whatsoever to threaten the Gambian people. The Gambian people have every right to come out and protest.
Okay,
so what is important is, like he said, let me just reiterate his point.
Yeah.
It has to come from the leadership.
Okay.
But of course, the opposition also have to take it.
So everybody
full-hearted.
basically has to be responsible.
Including the opposition, and precisely and preferably with the opposition to be more proactive.
All right. Let's hear from the youth representative here.
Thank you so much. We comprise more than 60% of this population.
Absolutely.
We have a responsibility in this country. That is to make sure that there is peaceful election. But the problem that we have here is when it comes to the politicians themselves. We've seen other political leaders make certain outrageous remarks. We've seen other people being attacked. But when it comes to other politicians from condemning what is right, they are always muted. They brush things under the carpet. And this is not actually helping.
Yeah.
This is where I want to come to make sure that all the youths understand that most of these politicians, they don't have the agenda of the country. All they have is to make sure that they are at State House by hook or by crook.
All right. Said, we began with you. I would like you to finish for us. Give us the Pan-African context. As African nations, how do we solidify our institutions and ensure peaceful transition of power?
I think it's just like they all said, is leadership, but also respecting the law. For me, it's not, even the leadership is not as important as, respecting the law, because the law doesn't even care who is there. It's about what is there. But what I also think, and I think it is also growing, is that, I see that there's a new generation of Pan-African movement that is coming up. Whether it is through the African Union, whether it's ECOWAS or these different regional forces, there is also that network of young activists. Africans are talking to each other more. And I think that's what we need to build on. That's what we need to continue to see how best we can strengthen. So, but what I'm saying is that
please allow him to
leadership is crucial. But the biggest problem in this country, and I think in many other African countries, Senegal is maybe perhaps moving further, is that political leaders do not meet. They do not talk. Sometimes they meet for photo opportunities, but when they go back, they're saying something different. And in this country, we had an opportunity to take our constitution back, but none of them, they meet, but they all had their own stories. They never agree on anything.
All right.
So what are we going to do?
Okay.
But the future is the youth, and the youth must take up leadership.
All right. That's a fantastic place to wind up. Actually, it couldn't have been more perfect, because behind us is APRC. I believe this is a meeting that's happening in State House, if I'm not mistaken. So election campaigns are at fever pitch here. We've heard a lot today. There's been a lot of passion, certainly a lot of heat. But if there's anything we can take away from this, is that elections come and go, but countries must always remain. Thank you for watching.